Hi, welcome to Winsight Grocery Business's COVID Live. I'm John Springer. I'm here today with Kat Martin, our content director, Jen Straley, our senior editor, and the supermarket guru, Phil Lempert. Phil, I just want to start it off this morning. Both Dollar Tree and Dollar General reported results. Dollar General just absolutely killed it. Their comps were up 21.1%. Their overall sales plus 27.6%. Their net earnings up 68.8%. Their margins were up. They're benefiting from SNAP, from convenient locations, from consumer trade down, from a really heavy emphasis on consumables. So really good news for them. Dollar Tree a little bit less good news because they were interfered with party sales and Easter seasonal goods and some of the discretionary categories they have. But another big winner financially through food sales and emphasis on value that really seems to matter. So I'm going to kick it over to you. What's on your mind this time?
Sure. Well, before I get to some of the stories, do you think that those shoppers that went to Dollar General and Dollar Tree for the first time are going to go back?
They might, if they're among the unemployed in this country and or otherwise kind of looking to save money given the economic distress in the country. It's easy to overlook, like, Dollar General has 16,000 stores in the U.S. and they're in every neighborhood. And I think while the big stores that can kind of face the or accept the large number of consumers that were coming there have benefited some. I think there's something to be said for the fact that stores that are closely located to the consumers are benefiting some. So, we'll see how everything plays out, but tough to see Dollar General sliding a whole lot, in this category. Traditionally, the discounters have done very well in recessionary times, and that's what it looks like we've headed into.
On the
They're
earnings
also
call, sorry.
located. So I was just say they're also
Go ahead.
located in a lot of those smaller towns where some of the big retailers can't have a presence because there's not enough people there. So I think that's probably helping them out too. Is people aren't wanting to drive 20 miles to go to a supermarket when they need something, and Dollar General is across town in their little town.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened during the last recession too. Walmart was seeing a little bit of share loss to these smaller, more convenient locations. People weren't going to drive 10, 15 miles to a Walmart when they've got a Dollar General that they can walk to or take a bus or something that's real close.
On the earnings call, did they talk at all about marketing strategy, what they're going to be doing over the next few months?
Well, they are. What can we say? They're a best-in-class retailer, as the analysts like to call them.
Right.
And so I think what comes through is that they were kind of prepared for a situation like this. In other words, an economic downturn. They've got a muscle
Yep.
that can kind of respond there. And I'm sure they get a lot of questions, how sticky is this going to be, that kind of thing. But I think they're getting a little bit of, a couple things. The people who would shop them, infrequently would shop them more frequently, and maybe they'll buy more when they go. And so there's a lot of little puts and takes, and that's definitely helped them.
I'm going to Facebook. Basic human needs comments. Smaller stores are essential nets for communities. I think we would all be in agreement with that. What we've seen is small farmers really be very, very resilient during this, moving to selling direct to consumers and so on. But a new survey from Resourced just came out this morning, and it says nearly a third of small independent farmers are facing bankruptcy by the end of 2020, because as things get back to normal, they feel that they're just not going to be able to fund next year's planting. And the interesting thing about this survey, and I think it was about 420 small independent farms, they are owned by people between the age of 24 and 40. So the big question is, are we going to lose a whole new generation of farmers because they go out of business and they just don't want, they can't afford and don't want to deal with it. So that's one survey. Another survey came out from Acosta this morning, and they found that just over half of shoppers, 51%, expect life to return to normal in less than 6 months, while more than a quarter of shoppers, 29%, believe it'll take more than a year. 66% of shoppers reported wearing a mask while shopping. Yay, good, finally. Mask usage has doubled since early April and is most popular among shoppers in the Northeast. That's led by you, John.
Yep.
And nearly half of shoppers, 49%, reported shopping during off-peak hours to avoid crowds. And Jen, I think that's you, right?
Yeah, well, I thought this was, interesting. Wegmans has cult status now, and the build up to one of their store openings is tremendous. You look at, they opened their Raleigh, North Carolina store in September, and 3,000 people turned out and got in line and couldn't wait to be the first to get in. So to avoid that, they've got 3 new stores that are, I think they're coming soon, but they've announced that they're going to tell people a time frame of opening rather than announce like this is when we're opening our doors. I mean, it sounds like they kind of want to do this, under the cover of night to avoid, thousands of people turning out to,
Right.
finally get into their Wegmans. So I thought that was an interesting way to handle crowd control.
It'd be interesting to see if they can keep that secret with the pervasiveness of social media out there, and whether the shoppers who want to get into that store are really going to want to tell their friends.
And also, I'm seeing a lot of store openings. We haven't seen any store openings for, a past couple months, but now it seems like everybody's opening up stores. And Jen, you're pointing out one of the challenges, which is distancing, when you've got a cult. Like Wegmans, but what about some of the other store openings around the country? What's going on there?
Yeah, there's been like a kind of a spring flurry of, in May, June openings of stores. You got PCC, Barron's Market, HEB, who else? Raley's. So there's just been this flurry of new store openings. And what's sort of bittersweet about it is, take like Raley's just opened this new store, beautiful. But there's a really sleek wine bar and the stools are like right next to each other. And, there's a community, like a gather room, they're calling it. It's like equipped with AV and you can have a meeting there. It holds up to 28 people, but all of that stuff is on hold. These stores were in, design and construction well before this happened. And then, I saw that Barron's also, they just opened a new store in Southern California and sent, beautiful photos. And I saw that they had turned the salad bar, you could see the metal salad bar bins, but now they've got grab and go prepackaged salads in those fixtures. And then HEB opened a new store and it's got a child play area, which obviously has to remain closed for the time being. So, I think it's just a lot of wait and see. I'm sure that customers are excited to have these new stores in their communities, but they can't really enjoy the full experience.
Well, let's talk about the customers for a moment. What do we think is the effect when a customer goes into a new store and they see that, I don't know, let's say 15% of the store either has plastic sheets over it or it's just not doing all that well with this? I mean, do they get turned off by this? I remember when Gelson's took over from Hagen here in Santa Monica, and they went in and they opened up really quickly. They opened up, I want to say, in a week from turning it over from Hagen, and people went in it because they were excited that a Gelson's was coming, but it didn't stick because it wasn't done. It was all over the place. And this goes back, probably 2 years, 3 years already, and they've never gotten the volume that probably they deserve for that store. Could it really turned off that physical appearance of the store really turned off a lot of people. So are these new stores at risk of that?
I don't know. I mean, I think shoppers are used to seeing, we just finished our retail food service study with Technomic, and there's a high percentage of I think it's like 81% of grocers have reduced their prepared foods offerings right now.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of that's due to salad bar closures, but I think it was 11% shut down their their deli prepared foods areas entirely. So I think shoppers sort of see that this is what's happening, and so I think they can assume that while these new stores are beautiful, that there are some changes that had to be made because of the circumstances right now, and that hopefully when we return to a real normal, that these areas will open as they were intended.
So
Except for
they'll be a little bit more forgiving. Talking about forgiving, in New York has just added their city to the list of LA, New York, San Francisco, Washington D.C., and Seattle, which have capped delivery fees for restaurant delivery services. In the case of New York, it's 20%, 15% for the food itself, and 5% on a cap for transmitting the order through their app. Do we think that this is going to go a bit further and extend to folks like Instacart and Shipt?
It might. One of the themes I think that is kind of being cut across a lot of the stories that we've been writing about for the last several weeks is this idea that as the country kind of adapts to a reopening pace, there's got to be a kind of a reassessment of the models that we used to do. So in restaurants, it's the delivery fees that make it difficult on the operators, but the operators have to do it in order to fight for their share. But it's also, restaurants that are using, large, amounts of workers who might not be paid enough. The debate about grocery workers, are they getting paid enough? The debate about the slowness in the meat supply chain, is it because the plants aren't set up to properly pay and care for and take enough time to get out these products that are safe for the people working and also for us to eat? And what is that going to mean for prices? So I don't know a whole lot about what's going on in New York with the delivery fee, but I can tell you just as a consumer, we pulled back ordering through Seamless some time ago, even before the economic pressures came with this thing, because we realized that we used to be able to walk to the Chinese restaurant and get a meal at whatever $30, and then we order it through, and it's $55. It's just, like at some point, people got to say the convenience, is like unstoppable, but people might have to reassess what they're willing to pay for it, and perhaps the cities and the states are working to kind of pressure this.
So, John, I want to go back on what you just mentioned about grocery workers. You've got a great piece up on Winsight, the grocery analyst who became a grocery stock boy,
Yeah.
a Q&A. Tell us a bit about Brian Roberts.
So I know Brian through having worked in the industry for many years. He used to comment on my stories. He's actually contributed some bylines to our publication when he was with, I think, TCC Global, which was a big consumer products consulting firm that worked with retail. And as Brian explains, he's based in London. He lost his job due to a curtailing or restructuring early this year, after having been an analyst covering the grocery industry for more than 15 years. And so when the grocer sent out the signal to kind of come and join us, he had nothing to do. He went and joined it, so
And
his
he
Twitter
joined
feed,
Tesco, right?
yeah, he joined Tesco, and he's basically a stock boy. But his Twitter feed is always entertaining from a knowledge point of view. When he was talking about kind of the big picture of things, and now he's talking about how to merchandise bananas in stores and what he's learning about that. And I forget the actual quote. He put it very well in our interview, but he talked about kind of coming to realize the amount of emotional and sort of quickness of mind, intelligence required to work in a grocery store that you wouldn't necessarily consider, even having studied the industry for as many years as he had. And so yeah, interesting piece. And you know what, he's going to come out of this hopefully pretty well, and I'm sure somebody will look at the combination of analytical skills and real world experience, so to speak, in a really tough time for the industry, and that'll hopefully that works out great for Brian. But it's fun just to kind of learn from him, the perspectives he's had on this.
And Kat, what are you seeing in Chicago?
In regards to the delivery fees,
Yep.
or
Delivery fees, workers, all the above.
well, I kind of wanted to go off of John's point when he was saying, the amount of intelligence or whatever needed in order to work in a grocery store. I don't think people really realize how quick thinking you do have to be when you're on the floor and answering questions from customers and seeing things that need to be fixed right away, and how do you fix them when things go wrong. So we've talked a lot about this just internally amongst our staff too, is where does the grocery worker go from here? Like, where does labor go from here? We've had fun with the action figures, or the little Lego toys, or they were that came out, and grocery workers were one of them celebrated. But what does that mean for the future? Does that mean that little kids are going to grow up now and say, I want to work in a grocery store, just like they say, I want to be a policeman, I want to be a nurse, I want to be a doctor? Is this going to be kind of a shift in how we view the people who are working in our stores? Are we going to start to value their contribution more than maybe we have in the past, whether that comes in the form of payment, or that comes in the form of making sure that they know that they have a career path, that just because you come in as a stock boy doesn't mean that you are going to be stuck as a stock boy. You can end up being, in the case of several grocery chains, the CEO. So right. Understanding where this goes after this, now that there has been so much attention placed on the grocery worker.
Yeah, I mean, we talked last week about Bob Mariano, who started out as a stock boy at Dominick's and rose to be CEO there,
Yep.
sold it, and then CEO at Roundy's, and now he's doing it again. So that's a great example. But to your point, don't we first have to improve the pay? If we want smart people, we want quick people, are they going to take a job for $11 or $12 an hour? And Jen, you've been sitting in on all these UFCW calls. What are you hearing from them? Are wages going to go up for grocery workers?
Well, it remains to be seen. That's what they want. I think that's what they deserve. We were talking internally yesterday, and I had this thought that hearing from these frontline workers in all of these UFCW press conferences, I wonder if some of these folks are going to get hired away from other industries. I mean, the grocery business is in this unique position right now that, with nothing else open, we're leading the charge on how this all works. And you see the resources and the skills that are required to move forward through this. I think that one possible outcome is that grocers are going to have to start paying workers more, because they're going to be hired away from other industries that want those skills.
But we do have certain cases, picking up on your comment on Wegmans, who's always paid well, who invests in training and has a very low turnover. And whenever I talk to a retailer about training their employees, store level employees, they say, well, we can't afford to because our turnover is so high. And then you point to Wegmans and say, well, they've got low turnover and they're paying well and they're still making money. And why not look at that model? What do you all think? How can we get these retailers to follow the Wegmans model for employees?
It's not just Wegmans. I mean, when you think about workers, companies that can pay workers well, Costco, Aldi, Lidl, right? Why? Because they've got an efficient model that can get by with maybe, in Aldi and Lidl's case, many fewer employees than a regular store, a structure that allows people to move around to different jobs and a ruthlessly efficient model. They can give a little bit more to their employees. Costco, same way. People pay to shop at Costco. Part of that helps to pay their employees more.
Right.
These are advantages for these grocers, and they've been demonstrating that for some time. So, we've seen moves. Walmart's made a lot of progress. I know that they're usually looked at as sort of a punching bag in the labor thing, but to listen to them talk about sort of how they're approaching their worker now. They've devoted some 150 super centers now have a classroom in the back where they're training people. They're giving them certifications, and separately or together with this, they're doing this separate Great Workforce Initiative. Again, this is kind of a combination of an efficiency program and a worker retention program where they're going to figure out how to get by with fewer employees, but perhaps get them to reduce their turnover, stay longer, be a little bit more useful for the company on a regular basis. And then, at the same time, they realize that a lot of people, are transient by nature in the grocery industry because it's a job that you don't necessarily need a lot of experience for. People, high school students and people who can only work part-time or have long found opportunities there. And so you've got to kind of balance that out as well, because that's an efficient, source of labor for companies that need it. So there's like a lot of puts and takes in there. And like I said, I think there's a movement. I think there's a realization among grocers that they need to kind of move here, but it's tightly tied to efficiency and this idea that they need to save money to invest it back in their workers and their stores.
And I think also if they could understand how figure out how to communicate to the stock boys and the checkout people that that's not the only job in the grocery store, or nor is even being in the store the only job in the company. I started out working at Hy-Vee. I was, one of those helpful smiles in every aisle. But I had no clue that Hy-Vee is, a really good company to work for. I only saw my one store in my one small town, and I didn't want to be front end manager, which was kind of like the next step up. But if there is they could figure out how to put in place when you have these, promising people come in, and I'm not saying that I was a promising Hy-Vee employee, but when you have these promising people come in to say, this isn't your only path, like what you see in the store isn't the only path that you have, we have all these other options that could be of use to be what you want to do. If you want to go into marketing, we have that for you. I think there just needs to be a better way to, once we get these kids coming in the door at, minimum wage, do they necessarily need to make more than that? I don't know, but we can move up the chain so that they do make more than that and, can still contribute to the company and, become part of the company. And, then you have that longevity where you have people who've been there for 20 years, 30 years, and just managed to work their way up.
So do you want me to give Randy a call and
Yeah.
some good word for you?
Yeah, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me go to Facebook for a second. St. Mary's Galaxy Food Center is with us and asks, how can independents help the local farmer and basic human needs has a great answer. We must invest in small farms, help them build to scale, similar to what we're seeing Publix doing right now. John, you mentioned Lidl. They've also passed a milestone, you write.
Yeah, yeah, interesting milestone for them. It was their 100th store that opened. It was actually their 102nd because two stores that they opened before reaching 100 closed last summer. But 100 is a number that we associated with them because when they first rolled in 2017, they said we'll have 100 of these in 1 year, and they
Right.
never got there, right, until yesterday. The lesson from Lidl is they've been adaptable. They've rolled with the changes. They came to terms with the fact that their store that they built, which I thought was like handsome and nice looking and
Right.
beautiful,
Yeah,
especially
it was
for a
gorgeous.
discount store.
Yeah.
But the bean counters in Germany weren't happy with what it cost to build and run. And they had kind of a concurrent problem with some of the locations that they secured weren't ideal. They were egress and sort of similar to the problems that Fresh and Easy had on the West Coast.
Right.
So they really had to rethink how they were going to market. And now one of the things we noted was that there are more stores that were not purpose built as Lidls than there are as purpose built Lidl, or around the same amount at this point, where they're using second generation sites. Hey, look, they're already grocery stores. Their locations to a certain degree are proven, and then they're building stores, but they're building them smaller. There's not as much gleaming glass. There's the designs inside have changed from a kind of a it kind of gave off this a little bit of a upscale kind of discount thing, and now they're a lot more homey and more U.S. grocer-like, I'd say, in the idea they've got weathered brick and chalkboard type designs and a little softer approach maybe than they first had. So they've learned, and that's what got them to 100 stores. I think if they kept on the path that they'd started with, then we'd have 100 really beautiful empty stores.
Right.
I happened to look up yesterday the Rockingham and Kinston, North Carolina stores that they built. Those were the two that opened in their first wave that it's closed. They're still empty boxes.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, John, when we talk about Lidl, they've done an exceptional job, better than Aldi, on their fresh foods. And very very few people give them credit for really doing that. And I think that if with the new homey image and so on, and certainly now more shoppers going to Lidl as an alternative, hopefully we'll be talking about their 200th store soon.
Yeah, they're getting there quickly.
Yeah. Hey, Jen, give us some good news to wrap up.
Okay, I've got two things to say today.
Okay.
Southeastern Grocers has raised almost 1.3 million for local food banks, and Hy-Vee just announced today. I thought this was really cool. That they're going to host a virtual kids triathlon to raise money for kids with cancer.
Very cool. Very
My
cool.
niece used to run those Hy-Vee triathlons. They're wonderful events. Sorry.
Okay. Hey, I'm calling Randy as soon as we get done.
This was not meant to be a Hy-Vee plug, but I just happened to grow up there. So.
I am a huge fan of Randy, the whole team, all of Hy-Vee, everything that they're doing, all their dietitians. I mean, for me, Hy-Vee is in that top tier of retailers in the country. So with that, let me see if we have any other questions. I don't think so. So thank you for joining us. As always, this episode and all of our archived episodes are on Winsight Grocery Business as well as on supermarketguru.com. And we will talk next Tuesday at 9:30 Pacific, 12:30 Eastern. Same thing on next Thursday. So I hope you'll join us and share on Facebook the video to all of your colleagues, and have a great weekend and be safe.